right. Good morning, everybody. Thank you, Brittany. So like Brittany said, we are going to be talking about closeouts and a bunch of information. It's going to be a pretty meaty meeting. And we're going to hear from both Angela and Chris Blankenhorn. So I'm just going to go ahead and jump into it. Some topics for today. We're going to talk about quarter 5 programmatic and financial reports, closeout financial reports, closeout equipment reports, some jot form data information that we need from you all, success stories, and return of funds. All right. So quarter 5 reports are due on 4/30. The grant period ends on March 31st. So that means that grant funds must be obligated and services must be fully delivered by the end of the grant period. Quarterly reports for quarter 5 are due April 30th. So that's 30 days after the grant ends. And programmatic must be built on consecutive quarters for the total performance measures. And these are all submitted in UNA. Closeout reports are due May 30th, and that's 60 days after the grant period ends, and funds must be expended, and goods and products must be delivered, received by that closeout date. Again, submitted within UNA. And then return of funds, if you have any return funds that need to be returned, that due date is July 14th, and that's 45 days after closeout. There's going to be a resource that's shared out. It's just the ICCB grant resources page that you can visit to look at that return of funds form. All right, and I'm going to hand it over to Chris Blankenhorn, who's going to talk us through a couple other pieces.
Yep,
Can you introduce yourself really quick? People probably know who you are. They've seen your
yep,
email, but maybe not.
yep. So thanks everybody. I'm Chris Blankenhorn. I'm the Associate Director for Program Compliance. So I am your go-to stop for reporting and such. Um, as was said previously, the grant is about to end at the end of this month. 30 days after, you'll have your quarterly reports that are due, and then 60 days after that, you have your closeout. Sorry, I had to pop up. So when you do your close, just to step back a sec before I touch on closeout, when the grant ends, you will have needed to, have obligated your money so that and delivered all of your services. So that means, you can't provide any new classes or things like that. But if you had ordered a supply or something like that, and it hasn't been delivered by the closeout, you're fine there. You still have the to the closeout period 60 days later to have to actually receive that supply. So that's kind of the reason for those two reporting periods. We've got the standard quarterly report that'll be due on April 30th, and then 30 days after that, we'll have the closeout. So the closeout form must be completed and submitted in UNA. As was said, they're due May 30th, 2026. There are a couple things that you will need to do as an IBT grantee. First, you'll need to upload a closeout financial report. If your quarter 5, was done, if you didn't have any outstanding invoices, you didn't have any, outstanding, deliveries of materials or goods, you could have said, this is our closeout. There's a little box on G26 of the form. That said, for simplicity on our side, we're still going to have you upload that same form again. So if you did close out, you'll just come in, drop that Q5 form in. That's so we don't have to run around and say, oh, did Rock Valley close out fifth quarter because they didn't support a closeout, right? This way, we get everyone submitting that closeout, even if it is a little duplicative by re-uploading. So that first step, or I guess it's the second step. The first step would be there's instructions that you'll acknowledge. The second step will you'll upload your closeout financial report. That is a required report. If your Q5 was your closeout, you'll just re-upload. If you did have some outstanding stuff, if you had any invoices that hadn't been paid out, if you were waiting on goods that you hadn't reported in your Q5, then you'll do an updated closeout. It uses the same form as the quarterly financial reports, which is available at icc.org on our grant resources page. If you had any qualified equipment, which generally will mean any equipment that is priced at $10,000 per unit or more, then you'll need to do a closeout equipment form. That can also be found for download on our grant resources page and should be submitted into UNA. If you didn't have any equipment, you can either leave that one blank or you could just put an NA, open up the file, put an NA and drop it there. Either one kind of works for us. That may shift a little as we go through this process of this award closeout. We're in our first year of it, so we'll see how things work. But right now, it's not required if you don't have any equipment. And then you're going to scroll all the way to the bottom, past all of the adult education stuff, and there is a box that will say that you understand that the demographic survey data will be submitted through JOP form. So that's just an acknowledgement. You don't have to upload anything there. You just need to make sure that you do that demographic closeout survey data as well. So those are the three things you need to file for your closeout in UNA. I realize I didn't specify how to access it when I started that. So to access it, you'll go to your grant award. You can see the screenshot right there for it's Trellis is who's in there, but you'll go to your award and in the custom tab, you'll click it and there is an award closeout box. So you'll click that and it'll work kind of basically like your quarterly reports. There's a plus button in the top corner and you'll add you'll add a new report. So that is how you file those reports. Again, there's, I guess, technically 4 steps because you have to acknowledge at that first step that you are doing the closeout. And a little why is it so messy? Is a UNA problem? Just for some background, UNA can even have a form can either be one award, one individual grantee, or everyone. And so to stop so we didn't have to add unique closeouts to every single grantee, we went with a universal form. So that's why you have to scroll past some of that adult ed stuff, where they have specific closeout reporting requirements. We just talked about this a little in there. That Q5 report can count as your closeout if all goods and services have been received, all invoices have been paid, and then as we said, even if that is the case, just for simplicity of reporting, we just want you to drop that in when you do the rest of them.
So, Chris, if they're doing their Q5 report and they know, I think I know the answer, but I want you to tell me that I have the right answer.
Yeah.
Everything's done, everything's in, services are done, everybody's paid, we're good. Do they have to wait till May to do the closeout, or can
No.
they submit the Q5 report April 25th, submit the closeout April 25th, and we're done?
Yeah, they should be done with that. The only flag I would raise there is just making sure that the JOP form is done. Because it's outside of UNA, I don't want someone to move fast and forget that point because it's the one part of it that is not integrated into UNA right now. So yeah, they can once they're ready to close out, they can close out as long as they've expended, at this point they can close out when they want. I did have a discussion this morning about early closeout, which does sometimes happen, multiple quarters early. And if you're doing that, you need to have expended all your money. So otherwise it would be a de-obligation and it's a whole thing. But yeah, as long as they've expended their money, they've received everything, they can close out as soon as they are ready.
Okay. So they don't have to necessarily put a flag on their calendar to go back into UNA to
Nope.
upload the one report later on. Okay.
Yep. If they're ready when they're doing their award closeout, yep, they can, or not their award closeout. If they're doing their 5th quarter, they finish that. They can click that custom button, click that award closeout, and be good.
Okay.
Another thing I do want to raise, I don't think it's happened in the last couple years for IBT, but it has for other grants. Um, if you do have things outstanding and you're approaching closeout, so I know we had this with a big piece of equipment for a grant that it got held up in supply chain issues. If you're nearing that 60 days and you're still waiting on something, someone hasn't sent you an invoice, just reach out to Angela or Emma and request an extension on your closeout, and we can extend that closeout period. Obviously no new work can be done, but most of the time, I think every time I've seen this, it's been due to supply chain delivery issues. So if you know you're waiting on something, you know it's not going to be here by that closeout by May 30th, just go ahead and reach out and we can extend that for you.
But reach out before May 30th, not
Reach
after.
out before May 30th, yeah. Otherwise, we'll probably extend it, but you'll probably get an audit finding if someone looks.
Fair enough.
The equipment form, so you need to include any equipment purchased this grant cycle from January 1st, 2025 to March 31st, 2026, valued at $10,000 per item. Uh, if you look, I because someone else is sharing, I can't share the form. But when
It's
you
on the
look at,
next slide.
oh, cool, yeah. So when you look at it, when we're asking for inventory numbers, things like that, that's your internal number. We don't have any way that we dictate that track these things in terms of your inventory. So some of these will be, what do you call it internally? So you'll give the number, the item description, the present value after depreciation. That in the first year there should be no depreciation. So you should, for that should be generally the cost of the item, unless unless you have a multi-year grant. You'll talk about the use condition, the acquisition date, the purchase price, the source of the funds, how much did ICCB pay for? Um, so if you, for example, um, you're helping fund a forklift program and you paid for 25% of the forklift because 25% of the students would be IBT students. That cost paid by IBC would be, or ICCB would be that lower number. Where is the equipment stored or held? And then at the end, the last three are if you've already disposed of it. So um, that is what the form looks like. It's pretty straightforward. Uh, at the top, make sure you fill that out, right? We need the date of a submission, the program name, which is FY25 IBT, the grant name, and the fiscal year. And NA is appropriate and acceptable when you're filling that out. So it's a pretty all-encompassing form that you may not have got. You like I said, you're in you're in a 1 year grant. You probably haven't depreciated anything. Similarly, you probably haven't disposed of it. So,
So again, with that program name, the reason we listed that the way we did is because I know a lot of you refer to your grant program as something different. Like I know NIU refers to theirs as Huskies Belong. When you submit something as a report for Huskies Belong, our fiscal department has no idea what you're talking about. They don't have any grant listed as a Huskies grant, as a Belong grant, and they get really confused and they come back to me and go, "Who is this and what are they doing?" So that's where when we said the program name is FY25 IBT grant, that's really to help all of our people make sure that we all are tracking this on the right process. We
I
love that
was
you have your own names. That's great. But for our purpose, we need you to call it the FY25 IBT grant.
I was very confused by what extra seasonings was in FY24. And then when it was explained it was a culinary program, it made total sense. But
Right.
necessitated me bothering Angela.
It's fine. Um, Chris, I will let you answer that, address that in the chat.
The grant agreement number, I will bring that up to our grants management staff who maintain those forms. About potentially, we've added it on a lot of things. So even if it doesn't, replace program name, um, putting it in there um, could help some, though I've also seen people put random numbers that look nothing like our agreement numbers in those fields. So,
But
but
great.
I will raise that with grants management.
Okay, the JOT form. There was a question in chat that said if we're doing things in UNA, does that mean we do not do JOT form? No, that does not. Because there are pieces in UNA, those are the quarterly reports, the fiscal reports, the closeout reports, those are all grant specific related reports. The JOT form is as well, but the JOT form is more demographic data. So in the UNA and the IBT closeout section, there's a question about completing the JOT form. Chris covered that. It's below the Delta Ed forms. You only need to mark that one, that you need to do that outside. So when you go outside, you're going to use a JOT form link to you, and you can copy and paste this if you really want to. Actually, you can't because it's on a shared slide deck and you can't do that. Sorry. But we will send it to you. When we send an email following this, we're going to send you a couple of different forms. We'll have this link in there. You'll have it by March 31. It's due 5/30/26, so at the same time as the closeout reports. Again, you can submit it at any point. And you want to make sure that you are adding numbers for each of the required categories to match your total number of students served. So if your total number of students served is 50, you may need to plug in a 20, a 20, a 10, a 0, a 0, and a 0. But you have to plug in a number, even if it's a 0, and they should total your overall number. If you have questions, if you cannot submit, we've had it last year, FY24 was the very first year we used it, and we ran into a couple of issues here and there. Programs could plug in numbers, but they couldn't submit. If you get to that point, please let me know. We think we have updated the drop-down list of programs. When you go in, you'll select your program out of a drop-down list. If you find you're not listed for whatever reason, please let us know. We can add you easily. But this is how we are able to track data. Again, demographic data. So it's gender, it's age, it's disability, veteran status, and there's a fifth one that I'm drawing a blank on. Ethnicity.
Yeah.
Racial status. So those are the 5 that we need. Several of them have an unknown. So if they didn't disclose, like for disability, a lot of programs don't have a yes or a no. They only have a yes option. So if there's not a yes, then they are a did not disclose or an unknown. So, but if you have questions when you get that link and you get into it and look at it, let us know. Reach out to one of us. We're happy to help you walk through it. It's not intended to be difficult and complicated. We are not looking for specific names or anything that way. We are looking for overall numbers. And that helps us be able to go back to our legislators. So because we were able to do this in 24, we were able to go back and share with some of the legislators this last grant cycle that said we served this many that were just disabled. We had this many veterans. We had this many male gender. So because of it, we're able to tell a better story from ICCB standpoint on your behalf. So questions on the JOT form? Emma, thank you for putting that link in the chat. Again, we will also be emailing it to you. Our auditors require those numbers and say they should come from the grantor. Okay, Julie Lant in the chat, what numbers are you talking about? Auditors require those numbers and say they should come from the grantor.
I'm assuming they're talking about the grant agreement numbers.
Okay.
Yeah, and yes, we do assign grant agreement numbers. So they'll be at the top of your grant agreement when you get them. When I said somebody that I've seen them where they didn't, it wasn't that someone else. It was just a random string of numbers because they didn't know their grant agreement number is, I think, what happened, and didn't want to open the file. But yes, everybody will get a grant agreement number as part of it. It's also in your UNA. So when we award, that's one of the fields we award is that grant agreement number.
All right, success stories. Something else that helps us tell a better story from the ICCB side of things for the grant. Every grantee is required to submit at least one success story during the grant year. Now, you are welcome to submit more than one if you want. There are programs that have sent us 5 success stories at a time. Great, we'll take them. But we need at least one, and you can do it at any point during the year. So for those of you that have already submitted one, thank you very much. You check that one off your list. And that's why we didn't put it in the closeout piece of this, because they can come in at any point. And so we didn't want to confuse people by saying they can only come in April or May. If you've got a great success and something's amazing happening in December, send it. If it's happening in June, send it. We're happy to have them. Feel free to use a template. However, you're not required to. And the link is there, but we will also make sure we include this link in the email that we send following this. Please make sure you get permission from the students to share their information. We don't need a copy of that form emailed to us, but in the case of an audit or something that way, you guys need to make sure you have that form that says, yes, the student gave permission to use their information, their picture, their name, whatever. Success stories can be about students or programs. The easiest, obvious ones are typically students. Someone graduated, they got a job, they made great success with whatever kind of events going on. They earned a credential, they continued on into college, they completed their high school diploma. But sometimes the success stories are also about the program specifically. We were able to identify this amazing partner that we thought was only going to do this one thing. It turned into 5 things, and now they're financially covering half of our students' tuition, and we're moving on with these great things. So that's still a success. That's still a benefit. That's something that your program did successfully. So keep those things in mind as well, because I know some of you are working very closely with students. Some of you are working on curriculum development. Some of you are working on different aspects and pieces. So please don't feel like you're limited to a student success story. That's why we don't title these as student success stories. But successes come in all kinds of shapes and sizes. So if you feel like you've got one that you want to share, please, 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 please do that with us. Again, those are what we can use to continue to advocate for additional funding for IBT dollars. And submit success stories to the IBT email, and then CC MRI on those when you're doing those. There is not a place to upload these in UNA. So again, these are not part of the granting reporting cycle, so we haven't put them into UNA, but email them. We are happy to have them, happy to take a look at them.
I'll just add yet.
Yet.
I may be planning something, but I am not forcing it on you right now mid-grant cycle.
And we appreciate that, Chris.
Yep.
Also, if you have pictures of students with the success stories, you're welcome to send them, but we do not have to have a story with them, because we also use some of these sometimes on social media pieces and with press releases and different things. So sometimes we'll use a picture, sometimes not. So, return of funds. Chris, do you want to talk about this? Do you want me to?
I can.
Okay.
Okay. So return of funds must be returned, funds must be returned within 45 days of the closeout date. So that for this grant would be July 14th, 2026. Just a note, if you send a return of funds and we process it, and then you find out, oh, we sent back too much, you find something you could have expensed to the grant. Oh, we sent back too much money. Once it's processed, we cannot unprocess it. And so recovering that money would require going through court of claims, it would be a long process. So make sure that, when you've closed out, you're closed out, actually closed out, and that you're solid on that number. If you go to that same grants resources page and you scroll to the bottom, there's a paragraph there that describes the close of the return of funds process. So after the closeout period is ended, if there are grant funds to be returned, please send a check payable to ICCB to return the unsent funds. Write in the remittance, the grant program and fiscal year. There is a form, you can see the link there, that you need to submit along with it. as well as the copy of the closeout financial report so that we can confirm that those numbers are correct. So I do believe this is a slight change that, we're asking grantees to initiate this. Um, if you don't, our fiscal team will get to it. We will see, oh, there was funds left over for, FY25 IBT for this grantee. They'll check with our financial division to say, did we get that money back, on their own? And then if not, then we'll follow up. But yeah, so if you have funds left over at the end of the grant period, unfortunately, any amount of funds. We did recently have a discussion about whether we could set a threshold to say if it's less than $20, we don't care, but the answer seemed to be a pretty solid no. If it's 3 cents that you have left over, you gotta spend 50 something cents to send us a 3 cent check. And we don't want that, but that is, state law on that one. So
Um, Chris, while you're reading that chat, also keep in mind we need the form with the check because if you're say because Chris mentioned Rock Valley earlier, if Rock Valley sends a check to ICCB that just says, "Here's our return of funds check," Rock Valley has multiple grants. And so our fiscal department does not know which grant it goes with. So then they start checking with everyone, but they have a window of time that they must process that paperwork. And so if they can't figure it out, they have to return that check to Rock Valley, even if it's for the correct amount. So again, please make sure you're including the information, the form, everything with it. So our fiscal team, who does not work in our programmatic world, knows Rock Valley is returning this money for IBT for FY25, whatever, and it matches the report, everything is there. So the more information that you can include, please do so. Again, this is one reason why we invited you all to include your fiscal staff on this meeting and on this call so they could hear it. Share the slides with them if they're not able to join you today. If they've got questions, they can reach out to us as well. But we don't want to have to send a check back to either you sit on it and then mail it back to us again, or have to cancel it and then issue a new check with all the right, there's a lot of extra steps that can be saved if we can just all get on the same page with how this needs to work through.
yeah, and by putting both the return of funds form and the closeout in that same, um, you know, letter, basically, because when you go to the website, what you're going to see is that you're going to mail it. You're going to mail that check to our senior director of finance and operations. And so when you include both of them, that means they have all the information they need in front of them to process that check. If you leave out that closeout report, now Zia is going to have to bother me, going to have to bother Angela, going to have to bother our grants management team. We're going to have to track down the closeout report, which isn't a big deal until you multiply it by 1,000 grantees. Then those 12 clicks that you have to take to get to where you need to be in UNA to find the appropriate report and download it, they build up and they matter. So, yeah, and because it's going to our finance and operations team, they're even more segregated, like Angela said, than our grants management team. They review quarterly reports and stuff, so they might know a little more. The finance team sees very little of the day-to-day operations, so they would be very confused if there wasn't a clear line.
And also, again, using the right names. I have gotten hit in the past. A college sent in a check with initials on it that were interpreted differently. And so it was applied to a different grant, but that grant didn't know anything about it. So by the time it got to me, we were at the end of our window and I was out of town for 2 days. So shoved it past the window and the check had to be returned and we had to start all over. I'm not kidding when we say there's a deadline and they are obligated to follow them. Using the right names are important.
And that's also why we're very explicit that we can't return a refund because we have that deadline. Once you submit, you should assume it's being processed quickly. This isn't if we're buried under quarterly reports, they can sit for a minute. but this is something that we do have a statutory requirement to address quickly. So, um, I'm not saying if the next day, if you realized it, we couldn't stop it. Um, but the next week, then, the next month, you're probably going to be told, well, you're either going to have to eat that loss or go to court of claims. So,
Right. Okay, so Andrea's question in the chat. On the topic of closeout and funds, can you please remind us the GATA rules for spending beyond what was allocated for a certain budget line? Example, X% can be spent in another category to maximize spend down without a budget revision.
yep. Okay. So with your budget, obviously we're past the budget mod deadline. So no one can submit an official budget modification. That does not mean I almost said something that was misleading there. Um, so your budget is locked, right? It can't be changed. That said, your expenses can deviate from that budget within certain thresholds. So what that means is if you said you had $50,000 in personnel, you can deviate by 10% of each line, 10% of the total award for each line. So that means if you said, if you got, um, $100,000 award, that means you have $10,000 wiggle room per line. So you could go up to $59,999 in expenses um, in that personnel field before you would run afoul of anything, right? You're within that wiggle room. So that's the first threshold, right? Is 10% of the total award in or out of any line, any category, I guess is the better way to put that, not line. So up to 10% of the total award can be moved in or out of any given category. And then the second trigger is a total change of 50,000. So if that means technically you could wiggle $9,999 on five different um, on five different categories and be under that $50,000. So that's just something to keep in mind. The thought process of the double trigger is, $50,000 is that kind of max threshold. IBT is one of our grants where that actually can apply in theory, because you get I might have done the math wrong there. Yes, I did them. So 54,999. Sorry. Um, yes, you're correct, Joseph. Um, and I lost it.
That is why it takes a team.
Yes. Um, but the thought is, 10% is a significant amount of an award. And so moving that in or out, was something that we need to look at. Again, for IBT, where some of you are getting $375,000, it'd be very possible to move 50 between categories and hit that threshold. For our, non-credit grant, that's 50% of their award, right, to hit 50,000. And we can't, so that's why there's that double threshold. It's a special, it will impact here a little. You could only, if you got that $375,000, you could only do, 37,500. Okay, I think Margaret's actually right too. Okay, let me start over on that. So yes, I would. Margaret is right. It's the total award. So the total, if you have $100,000, your total award is $10,000 is that 10% cap. So you could go 59,999. It may be 20% of personnel, but it's 10% of the total award. Sorry. Got confused by the multiple things here. And we wish it was simpler too. We got these rules from GATA. But the best way to think about it is two triggers. You can either move, you can move up to 10,000 or 10% of the award from each line, or you can, and as long as you're below that, you're good. And then the next trigger is 50,000 total move. But it's important to remember this does not change your budget, right? Your budget's locked in. This is you being allowed to deviate in your expenses.
Right. So on your quarter 5 report, so when Chris is saying your budget is locked, your budgeted award amount stays.
And the
So in your
categories that were approved.
yes, and the approved category amount. So when you plug in your expenditures, you may show a plus or minus in a category. And that's okay. That's where we would go in and we would figure out that 10%. Oh, they overspent by $20 here, but they underspent 20 here, they're overspent 20 here. They're still within their numbers, they're all good. So that's where those deviations show up. The budget amount, do not change your budget amount. You plug in the budget amount stays, you show your expenses, and that's then where we can see the deviations in the percentages. But the budget amount lines do not change. So if you have done that on previous quarter reports, fix it for quarter 5. Because we're hearing our fiscal department is reaching out going, so we have some programs that are like randomly changing their budgets. And we're like, oh, I bet they're overspending, underspending, deviating a little bit here or there, and they're making the changes. So to Chris's point, your awarded budget amount for each category, that's locked. You should not be changing that unless you have done a budget modification and it's approved. Then that new is what goes in there. If you're just deviating, then you need to make sure that those are small deviations that we can see in the percentages. The other thing that Chris did not mention is if you're moving money into a category that is currently sitting at 0, that's not allowed. I don't care if it's $20. I don't care if it's 10 cents. Per state legal guidance, right, Chris? It's not allowed without a modification.
So if you reach the end of your grant and you find a travel opportunity, but you don't have any money in travel, you can't deviate that. You would need a budget mod to officially make travel a category. Um, yeah.
Right. And Lindsay, yes, verify your numbers with your team.
And it is an either or trigger. Yes.
And if you have questions when you get down, you're down towards the end and we're there. You're basically at 3 weeks and you're at the end of the grant. If you're meeting with your fiscal team and there are questions that come up, please reach out to one of us or all of us.
Yep.
At ICCB, not the whole listserv, but at ICCB, reach out to us and say, programmatic's understanding this, fiscal's understanding is this. Help us know what we can do. How do we do this? How do we make sure this is right? Because we would much rather help you fix it ahead of time and get it straight on your report than have to come back to you afterwards. And then you go, oh, well, we could have spent more money. Oh, we could have whatever. So please, please, please. And I know, do not feel like you're bothering us. Believe me, this is not a bother. This is job security. So reach out to us, ask us for the help us. We want to help you make sure we're all getting this right, because it'll be a bigger panic later when we reach out and go, oh, it looks like you didn't spend $35. You have to cut us a check for that. And you go, oh, but I could have, we didn't know. And so we can help you with those things. Please, please, please. I cannot say that enough. Please reach out. Malgrazada, we're going to go to the next slide. Guess what?
And I kind of with what Angela was saying there, it sounds weird to encourage, that the deviation right at the end of the grant. But now that we're past the grant period, we don't want you sending money back. You don't want to send money back. So now, obviously, like halfway through the grant, if you're making a minor change, that deviation is, nice and useful. Now at the end of the grant is where it can help you really spend down your money. So, make sure you're thinking about it. But one thing to keep in mind, it is a cumulative change. So if in quarter 2 you deviated $20,000, you now are capped at 30 because you've got that 20 is already sitting on your deviation plate. So keep that in mind as you do it. But yeah, definitely keep that, keep the fact that you can move, you can shift some money outside of within those thresholds. Right, at this point in the grant, because that it can be a big boon to helping you kind of clean up the end of grant, expenditures and zero out your allocation.
Okay, so we met Malgrazada's request. We got Joseph's questions answered. Andrea's questions were answered. Who else has a question? We've got about 15 minutes left. Is there anything we've missed with any of this that you're looking for? Do you think you can find the closeout report in UNA?
One thing I will note, if you go to the grant opportunity or the grant resources page, on ICCB's website where we've got all of these documents, at the top, you will see links for financial reports, quarterly reports, closeout reports, equipment reports in JOT form. Those are for our non-GATA grants that are not in UNA. So you're going to want to kind of scroll past those first couple paragraphs, and down below you'll see, grant documents where you can find the financial reporting to GATA. You can find the budget mods. There's closeout equipment reporting on there. So for this grant, if you click something and it takes you to a JOT form instead of a Excel doc, um, you've found the wrong thing because you're a GATA grant and you need to be in UNA. So it's right there at the top where you see those links right there. Those are all for our non-GATA JOT forms. And then as you scroll down, that's where you'll see, there's the student success story template. There's our indirect cost tool, but then under grant documents, you've got financial reporting documents, your budget mod documents, the closeout documents down under that. And then return of funds at the very end with the return of funds form linked right there. And to Angela's question, does anyone need shown how to access that reporting functionality in UNA?
And I know we've said this before, and I will say it again, Chris. So yes, please. So while you're logging in, if that's what I just made an assumption. Chris, are you going to log in and share
Yep.
your screen? Okay, thanks. Again, we've said this before. I will say it again. If you need an extension for some reason, we've had grant members with family medical issues come up at the last minute. We can grant you an extension. But as we said, we've got to be able to grant it prior to the extension. So if you find you need an extension on any of these reports, whether it's the Q5 report, whether it's the closeout report, whether it's the equipment report, it's the whatever report, please, please, please know that we can give you an extension, but you have to ask for it prior to the extension date. And those dates are calendar based. So if they fall on a Saturday or a Sunday, we are not working on a Saturday or Sunday. You're going to have to request that date by Friday. I'm sorry. You can work on Saturdays and Sundays if you so choose. I'm not requiring it. And so we've got to have that request by Friday. So just know that we can give those to you. And the other thing, this is the first year we have not done an extension for IBT. I think this will make it much cleaner, much easier. I know 5 quarters has been a little bit weird when we first introduced that concept. A lot of ICCB people, a lot of grantees went, huh? 5, what? No, how does that work? I think it's gone well. And so I'm really excited to see what reports are coming in, see how all of you are doing, the demographic data on JOT form, all of these pieces. I think it'll be really good stuff. I've heard great things from all of you about what you've been able to do. And again, we will be sharing out the link to where the recording is saved. The PowerPoint will be there. We're going to attach documents to this, links to documents, the JOT form. I mean, there's going to be all kinds of Rennie, you're now going to be hit with so many links, you're not going to know what to do with that. Thanks for asking. And so, yes, we will make sure all of this goes out because the closeout is something new that's being required of all grantees this year. In the past, it's been, well, we'll kind of do it, we'll see how it goes. Strongly encouraged. I don't know that required necessarily was the right word, but we kind of fumbled through it. And so this year we're doing it. And so we're trying to get all the information out to everybody that needs it. So again, Rennie, if your fiscal people are not here, but you want them to have this information, share the information with them. None of this is top secret. We need them to have this information as well. Chris, are you able to get in? Or are you
Yep.
still okay?
All right. Are you all seeing my UNA?
Yep.
Cool. So I just went to the first one on the list. But when you go to your grant, you'll have your details screen. We mentioned earlier that your award ID is on this screen. So if you go to the post-award information, you can see that opportunity funding, all that info.
So
But
that award ID number is their grant agreement number. Is that what you're saying?
yes,
Okay.
yes. So that is what Amplifund calls the grant agreement number, or we chose to have our grant agreement number stand for that award identification number in Amplifund. So once you're in here, it should be pretty um, recognizable for folks. This is where you would go to do your management reporting periods, to submit your quarterly reports, but to do the closeout, because closeout is not a built-in thing in Amplifund, you'll come over to custom and you'll choose award closeout. It will open up right now. Obviously, we haven't closed out yet, so there's nothing there. And then up here, you will have, just like a quarterly report, the little plus sign, add your report in, complete it out, submit it, and then it'll show up there for review.
So this will not show up until April 1st.
No, it is there.
So how do they get oh, because you're not a grantee, you can't
Yes.
add a closeout report. Got it. I was like, why isn't the plus sign there? Okay.
Yeah, because
Yes,
I'm
you're right.
on our side. Yes.
Yes. Yes. So just and by that, in case you aren't aware, the screens that you all as grantees see in UNA are different than what we as a grantor sees in UNA.
And there is not a flip button.
Correct. Don't ask us how we feel about it. That's a whole nother hour-long meeting. But either way, that's where you will be able to go, is to go into custom, and you should be able, so they should be able to see it now.
Yes, they should see it now. They'll see it on day one.
Okay.
When I'd said earlier, we're talking about things for student success, we're talking about another one of these possibly being there for success stories, and you
Okay.
can do it anytime. You could do it on day two, or you could do it on the very end. And for that same conversation that Angela had about timing, was why I think we're not going to have the success story be part of closeout, but its own separate thing when we actually get to that.
Okay.
Let me see if I can. So this is what it's going to look like for you when you're in there. So I can actually show it to you. You'll have your instructions, like we said. So you'll confirm that you understand how this report works. You'll choose a file to upload your closeout financial report. Again, that is the same document that you use for quarterly financial reports. So if your last quarter counted as your closeout, you'll just re-upload that one again. If you had some stuff outstanding at the last quarter and need to do a separate closeout, you'll just use that same exact form that you always have, but updated for your closeout information. That report is required. The acknowledgement is required. If you have a qualified equipment, you'll upload your file there. And then you're going to skip past all the adult ed stuff to the bottom, and you're just going to acknowledge down here that you understand you need to go do the IBT demographic report elsewhere. So pretty straightforward. The hardest part is remembering that you have to skip the middle to get to that last question. And again, all of that is accessed didn't open it in a new. All of that has access through custom award closeout, and then clicking the non-existent plus up there. Where's my over here?
Any other questions? Okay. So you get 5 to 8 minutes back in your day. Woohoo! Thank you very much. Hopefully this was helpful. Again, I cannot say this enough. Please reach out to us if you have questions. If you need help with something, you can't find it, you whatever, know that we are here to help you, and we want to help you get through this and wrap this grant up successfully and spend all of your money. Please spend all of your money.